for Mel, please? Thank you. Learning sponsors. A Year of Learning by Sue and Arnie Garelick in memory of Malcolm Perlman and Philip Mann. And Yisrael David ben Arav Tzvi Hirsch, Beryl ben Arav Tzvi Hirsch, Yosef Meir ben Arav Tzvi Hirsch. Kenya Rivka Pro Rosna Bas Arav Tzvi Hirsch. And a memory of family murdered in the Holocaust. Arav Tzvi Hirsch ben Shlomo Yaakov, Sarah bat Ephraim, Yisrael David ben Arav Tzvi Hirsch, Ephraim ben Arav Tzvi Hirsch. Adia bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Miriam bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch. Pesel bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shalom ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shlomo Yaakov ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shmuel ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch. Shall share her children and grandchildren in memory of her uncle, founding member of BRS, Dr. Israel Brook, Israel ben Arav Akiva, Marcia Federbush and family in memory of her husband, Dr. Uriel Paul Federbush, Uriel Pinchas ben Arav Shimon. Sharon and Fred Lisker, their family and many friends, in memory of her dear mom, Harriet Friedman Edelbas Yaakov. Leslie and Gail Kaplan in memory of their parents, Harry and Marjorie Sedell, Irving and Pearl Kaplan. Friends of Avi Gitler, Avram Meir ben Shimon and Martha Gitler, Sharna Bas Yeshaya. Friends of Toby Paris, Sarah Tova bat Yisrael Dov. Friends of Malka Levi, Malka bat Yosef. Friends of Joe Wolf, Yosef ben Chaim. Charlie Gelfenstein and Sam Levine in memory of Ramona Levine, Rachel Matel Bas Asher. A Month of Learning by Dov Budlander in memory of his wife, Udal Bas Yehuda Tzvi, by Mordechai and Miriam Burr in memory of his father, Yaakov ben Mordechai, by the Friends from Yarmouth E in commemoration of the Shloshim from Miriam and Michael Schiffer's son, Zev David ben Shimon Halevi. A Week of Learning. Day, okay. All right, week, a Day of Learning by, today is the 12th, by Marty and Joe Walensky in memory of her mother, Gidalea Bas Moshe. May the Shemas have an Aliyah, Cranker Rafir Velti Yeshira Shema Tzliya and Chol B'nai Yisrael Good Gaben Shtiyah.
Amen.
Okay, gentlemen. Okay. Very quickly, Dalet Amud Beis, the bottom of the Amud. We saw that there were various attempts to try to put something inside the 20 Amma high sukkah in order to reduce the height. Okay, we saw 3 or 4 different examples of that. Okay, and towards the end of the Amud, they try now to go to another example, another situation where we're talking about the minimum height of the sukkah, the only 10 tfachim, small sukkah. Okay, so what happens? They're going to try to make a comparison with the Aron, as to say, how can we find what proof can we bring to say that this is the minimum height for a sukkah? Okay, remember we've said all along, no clear-cut specific statements in the Torah that spell that out, the height, the other aspects. That's why the Mishnah came. From there, we then went on to now trying to find sources or parallels where we can make that attempt of definition. Okay, so I'm picking up again on the bottom of Dalet Amud Beis. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, about 5, 6 lines from the bottom. Okay. All right. A couple more guys, I assume, will be coming in. All right. Itmar, it was said, Rav Chanina v'Rav Yochanan v'Rav Chaviva Matnan, that the following four sages taught. Okay, and then the Gemara says, V'kula Seder Moed. I told you that's actually an editorial comment. We won't go into the details there, but worth at least being aware of that. Kol ki hai zuga chalufe. Whenever this particular pair was mentioned, what would we change? Rabbi Yochanan umayle Rabbi Yonatan. Okay, we said that. Now, here's where we go. We said, what's the height mentioned of something in the Torah that we can try to identify with? Now, before, when we were talking about the 20 Amma, what did we use? We used a parallel example with Hilchos Shabbos, with the koreh, with the beam that could be put up in order to make Suras HaPetach. So we found a parallel example of the measurement. Now we're looking to try to do the same thing. Can we find a parallel measurement elsewhere with something else in the Torah and then use that as our means to identify this also minimum measurement? Okay, now let's go on. So the Gemara tells us, Aron Tisha uvekaporet tefach. If the ark itself, okay, was considered 9 tfachim, and the kaporet, let's call it for the moment the cover, all right, was another tefach, that gives us 10. Harekan asara. Uktiv, and it's written, V'no'adati lecha sham v'dibarti itcha me'al hakaporet. Okay, and the pasuk therefore says, I'll set my meetings with you and I will speak with you from atop the cover. Okay, so as we go on to today's daf, hey, Amud Aleph, the top of the Amud, V'tanya, but it was taught in a Braita. Rabbi Yossi Omer, Me'olam lo yerda shchina lemata v'lo alu Moshe v'Eliyahu l'marom. But according to this Braita, Hashem never really went down, all the way down to ground level. Important to keep that in mind, okay? And the others, Moshe and Eliyahu, never went up to heaven, okay? To be on the, right? Shneimar, as it says, Hashemayim Shemayim Lashem, Va'aretz Natam B'vnei Adam. Okay? The earth belongs to, heavens belong to Hashem, earth belongs to humanity. Okay? V'lo yerda shchina lamata. The Gemara answers. But the divine presence never went below. In other words, what?
Question.
Okay, hold on. Okay, you say it's the question, right? Okay, and that's how Art Scroll puts it. Okay, I could put it with an exclamation mark besides the question. Okay, as if the Gemara is challenging it without necessarily phrasing it as a question, but a challenge. Okay, that the Shechina never went below that 10 Amma, let's say, level. Okay, Vaktiv. But wait a second, but it's written elsewhere. V'yarad Hashem al Har Sinai. Okay, that Hashem descended on Har Sinai. Again, the Gemara comes back with its answer. Lamala me asarat tfachim. It never went below the limit of 10 tfachim. Vaktiv, but isn't written elsewhere. V'amdu raglav bayom hahu al har hazeitim. Okay, on that day his feet will stand on the Mount of Olives. Again, the Gemara answers. Lamala me asarat tfachim. In other words, it never went below the 10 tfachim. Okay. V'lo alu Moshe v'Eliyahu l'marom. Now we'll question the other side of the Braita. Okay. where it says that they never went up above. However, Vaktiv, isn't it written, Umoshe Allah El HaElohim, that Moses went up, right, towards there, send it to Hashem. Okay, what happens? Lamata me asara. Okay, the closest he ever came, okay, was still below, namely 10 tfachim. Okay, vahaktiv. But again, isn't it written? Vayal Eliyahu b'sara hashamayim. Okay, again, that didn't Eliyahu go up, right? Send in a whirlwind. And what is our answer, says the Gemara? Lamata me asara. Again, there was never, he never went, right? More than, okay. Now, notice what we're trying to do here, I would suggest that this concept of asarat fachim shows its own domain. Okay, right? And that is, so in other words, if you can show that it's a domain in and of itself, therefore that's going to tell us adequate proof that the minimum height of a sukkah must be at least that. Okay, all right, so what happens? Vaktiv. Wait a second, the Gemara is not done with the argument, but isn't it written elsewhere? Me'achaz pnei kisei, right? Parshaz alav anano. Okay, that what happened was he grasped the part of the throne, and then Hashem spread his cloud over him. And on this pasuk, we have a drush. Va'amar Rav Tanchum, he says, Melamed shepiresh, right? Shakai miziv shchinato va'anano alav, implying that Hashem did something, okay, right, in that particular situation. So the Gemara comes back now again, okay, with an attempt to say again that's still below 10 tfachim, right? Lamata me'asara. So what happens? Mikom makom. Okay, nevertheless, we have this pasuk. And how do we deal with this pasuk? Right? Me'achaz pnei kisei ktiv. It says he grasped the divine throne. What happens, says the Gemara? Ishtabu, right? Ishtar buve, ishtar bev, le kisa ad asara, and akat be. Okay. So in other words, what is the Gemara saying? That it's as if the throne itself was lowered, extended, stretched. Okay, and that's how he was able to grab hold of it. Okay, right. Bishnema Aron Tisha is the Gemara. Right, now we're coming back to our, right? So let's say, okay, that the ark was 9 tfachim. Dichtiv, why? Because there we have clearly spelled out a pasuk in the Torah that tells us, Va'asu Aron atzei shitim, making the ark out of, right, that kind of wood, acacia wood, right? Right, that's amatayim v'chetzi arko, va'ama v'chetzi rachbo, va'ama v'chetzi komato. There's the key word, right? Its height was an amma and a half, right? Ela kiporet tefach minalan. How do we know then that the cover was a thickness of 1 tefach? Petani Rabbi Chanina, taught by Rabbi Chanina. Kol hakelim she'asa Moshe natna behen Torah midat arkan umidat rachvan umidat komatan. Okay, says the Gemara that all of these utensils, right, made, okay, they were spelled out, their measurements, their height, their weight, their length, so on and so forth. Kiporat midat arka umidat rachva natna. Okay, namely that with this cover, it's right. It's
Length and width were
right,
specified.
it was specifically spelled out regarding the length and regarding the width. Midat komata lo natna, but its height was not given. Okay, so the Gemara says, "Say ulamad mipachot shebekeli." Learn this from what the minimum was for a utensil. Okay, namely the following: Shnei as it says, "Va'asita lo misgeret tefach savi." Okay, referring to the table, the shulchan for the showbread. Okay, said it had this misgeret, this design, if you will, this border, this I don't know what we would call it, like about so around the edge. Okay, all around. Okay, all right. Then that was a tefach. Malahalan tefach, afkan tefach. So the same way there, that measured 1 handbreadth. Okay, so likewise, this had to measure. This cover also for the arom had to measure 1 handbreadth. Okay, so the Gemara says, "V'nelef mikelim gufayu." So let us learn it from the utensils themselves.
Yeah, because that's not really a utensil, that's a takshir.
Yeah, we're going to get to that in a second. Hold on. Okay. All right. So what happened? So we're looking for something that we can use again as a parallel. Right? That's something that's spelled out. So the Gemara says, hold on a second. Tafasta meruba lo tafasta. You can't go for the larger measurement. Tafasta mu'at tafasta. If you have a choice, generally we go for the lesser, smaller, right? That particular measurement. Okay. The Tanya, as we learn elsewhere in a Braita. Okay. And where we're going to go, we're going to go to something else that is discussed among items that are associated with the Beis Hamikdash, something that had clear definition, the tzitz. But we're going to see the tzitz, which was the gold band worn by the Kohen Gadol. There's a machloket, okay, about that as well. Okay, so it's not so clear. So let's try it anyway. The Tanya says the Braita. Okay, we're going to get v'nelef mitzitz. So let's learn from the example of we'll call it the gold plate for the moment. The Tanya, tzitz domeh kamin tam. The tzitz is like a kind of plate, shel zahav, of gold, right? V'rachav shtei etzbaot, and its width was 2 fingers. Umukaf me ozen laozen, and it went from one ear to the other. Ukativ alav shnei shitim, and on it was written 2 lines. Okay, right. One was Yud Hey, the divine name Milamala. Okay, above. Okay, V'kodesh Laman, right, etc. Lamem Dalid Milamata. And the bottom line, according to this statement in the Gemara, so the divine name was on the first, let's say, row, and the second row was Kodesh Le, etc. Okay? Milamata. Va'amar Rabbi Eliezer, he says, Bar Rabbi Yossi, Ani re'itiv beromi, I actually saw it. He says when he traveled to Rome and he went to see, they allowed him to go in to see the items that were the Romans had captured from the destruction of the temple. All right. Ukatuv alav kodesh lashem b'shita achat. Okay. And his argument was, no, it was all written on one row. Okay. Right. Now, we could get into a long discussion here. Corin, I believe, actually has pictures. Okay, if you're interested at some point in that explanation. So the Gemara seems to now come to the conclusion that's not a good model to use as a way of coming to try to get our measurement. So let's try something else. Danin kli mikli ve'ein danin kli mitachshit. Okay, we now are saying that we will determine this from another utensil, and we can't use it from some embroidered item, some embellishment, some decoration. Okay, what happens is I start forgetting English as I do this. Okay, so the Gemara says, "V'nelef mizah." So let's learn it from a crown. Okay, Da'amar mar, as a master said, Zar mashu danin kli mikli ve'ein danin kli mehechsher kli. You want to use that? That's problematic too. Okay, because we have to determine it from a utensil and not determine it from something that is not exactly a utensil.
That's
It's a
interesting, 'cause now
preparation.
it's
It's
saying
a decoration
virus
on
is
the
an
utensil.
actual
Right,
baby.
he's saying that this crown is more of a decoration than it is actually a part of a utensil used in the temple. Okay? Mehechsher kli. Ihachi, if that's the case, if that's what you were going to argue, let's come back to our little 1 tefach measurement that we said that was around the show table, the table for the showbread. Okay, Miss Garrett, that also, Nami Hechsher Klihu. We could argue that that's also primarily a decoration, okay, of the showbread table and not really a utensil. Okay, that was the point Michael was touching on. Miskarto lemata haita. No, but maybe that 1 tefach piece that went around the table was not on the top. Maybe it was like the bottom, the base, part of the base of the table. Okay? If that's the case, right, Miss Garrett, Nami Hechsher Klihu. No, Miskarto lemata haita, it was below. So the Gemara tells us, Hanechelaman Amar Miskarto lemata haita. That's okay for those who say that piece of gold that was 1 tefach attached to the table was below. Okay, therefore it's an essential part of the table, and I could argue that the showbread table was there for a utensil, and I could therefore use that as my parallel. Ela lamanda amar miskarto lamala aita. But the one who says that piece was above, and that therefore it could be more than simply a decoration. Okay, right? Okay, Ella, rather, Lamanda Amar Miskato Lamala Haita, my Ikalamema, what are you going to say? Hi Hechsher Klihu. Okay, therefore, that simply is something that it's a something that allows for the beauty, the decoration.
But it's a mascara.
Yeah,
It's supposed to keep the collars from sliding off the table.
right. So you would therefore argue that it should be considered a
It was
utensil.
decorative, but it was.
Right.
Yeah, but according to your argument, then it's a component of the table.
Table,
and you
it's part
can't
of the
use it
table.
As a standalone measurement.
Right.
You have to argue that it was simply a standalone.
If you can use it,
May have had a function.
Right, hold on, Mike. all right, hold on. We're still looking for that extra 1 inch. We got the 9 for the arrow. We're still looking for that extra 1, right? That extra tefach.
I have a question about that too, but I'll say.
Okay. All right. Ella rather danin davar shenatna bo Torah midah. We divine, right? We derive it from something where the Torah gave a clear measurement. Midavar shenatna bo Torah midah. From something else that the Torah gave a clear measurement. Va'al yochichu tzitz v'zer shelo natna bahen Torah midah. And therefore we cannot use either the tzitz, the plate, the gold plate, or the zer, or the crown, where the Torah does not give a clear measurement. Klal. Therefore, we now have a general principle. Rav Huna Amar Mehachi. Rav Huna suggests it comes from the following. Al Pnei HaKaporet Ted Kadma. All right, he's giving another example, citing a different part. All right, where he's trying to say that maybe we can argue, right, that it is when it talked about sprinkling upon the eastern face of the cover. All right. So what do we mean by face? All right. Ve'ein panim pachot mitefach. And nothing has a face that's anything less than one tefach, a handbreadth. Hold on. Don't jump ahead yet, Mike. Okay? We'll get to that. All right? Ve'ema. And I might say, what do we mean a face is generally the size of a tefach? How about if I take the face of a condor, or I take the face of an ostrich, or I take the face of something like that? And that's what the Gemara is going to now raise. Ve'ema, I might say, ka'afei davar yochni. That's a yochni is a large bird. That's like an ostrich. Okay? Tafasta meruba lo tafasta. You're grabbing at something that's maybe too large. Tafasta mo'at tafasta. You have to grab at something smaller. Ve'ema ka'afei tziporta. So maybe I'll take the face of a small bird. Okay? Small bird could be a pigeon, right? I'm choosing that particularly because it was an animal associated with the Beis Hamikdash, or a dove. Okay? Certainly I could use the example of a hummingbird, but I'm using something that maybe I might be able to come back to in terms of the Beis Hamikdash. So the Gemara, the Zotar Tuva, that's too small. Amar Rav Acha bar Yaakov, Rav, Amar, right? So Amar Rav Acha bar Yaakov, all right? He says Rav Huna. What about Rav Huna? Pnei, when it says Pnei, Pnei Gamar. It's learning it from a face. And it's written elsewhere, El Pnei HaKaporet, okay? Towards the face of the cover. Uktiv Hatam, and there it's also written, Me'et Pnei Yitzchak Avin. Okay, so here we also derive that we have the same word Pnei that's identified with the face of a person. Now I can go ahead. Pnei lef mipanim shel mala. You want to say that you want to use a person's face as the measure? I want to use something else. What about the face of a divine being? That's how I'm going to translate a shalmala here. Okay, and you're going to see why ultimately. Dichti, why? Because it's written in a pasuk, Kirot Panei Elohim V'tartzeni. Okay, again, it's citing the situation that I'm going to say that here too, that it's like to see the face of a divine being and you were appeased by me. All right? Tafasta meruba lo tafasta. Again, maybe you're grabbing at too big a measure. Tafasta mu'at tafasta. Choose the smaller measure. Fine, says the Gemara. V'nilif mikruv. So let's try to learn it from the face of a cherub, a kruv. Dichtiv, as it's written, El HaKaporet, Yu Pnei HaKruvim. Notice I'm still going back to something associated with the Beis Hamikdash, with something that's tangible there, the face of the Kruvim. Amar Rav Acha bar Yaakov, this is Rav Abba bar Yaakov, Gemire, but we've learned, Ein Pnei HaKruvim Pechutim Mitefach, that the face of the Kruvim was certainly no smaller than a handbreadth. V'Rav Huna, Name Mehacha Gamir. And Rav Huna learned it also from here. So now we have another question. Umay Kruv. So, okay, so what are we talking about when we say Kruv? Okay, are we talking clearly about those items that were on the cover of the Aron? Those two, I'm going to use the word for the moment, figurines, okay? And how were they shaped? Were they facing each other? And how, right? So that's part of the question. All right. So my crew, Amar Abrabi Abahu, Kravya. gives just simply the Aramaic term. That's still the same word, kruv. Shekain bebavel, korin liyinoka ravya. It's like a child's face, because that's what in Babylonia, what they call a child, okay? Ravya,
A baby.
an infant, right? A small child, okay? All right, that's why, because on the other side, when you see the whole picture, excuse the comparison, to a certain Valentine's occasion, and they always show with the little arrows. Okay, why do they draw their image that they are flying around? What do they look like? Flying infants.
The cherubs, cherubs.
Cherubs. This is where they get it from, right here in the Gemara. This something else they stole from us. So okay. Anyway, but that's an interesting parallel. And Amar le Abai. So Abai says Ella me'ata, but maybe we can derive it from here. The following, where it's written, Panei ha'echad, Panei ha'kruv, Panei ha'sheni, Panei Adam. Maybe we should get it from a different example, namely from the example of the divine chariot that was held up by certain creatures, of which it had 4 faces. One face was an adult face, and one face was a crew. Okay? The other,
Chair.
right? If you look at Yechezkel chapter 1, okay, you can see it's discussed there. One was a lion and one was a bear, right? That was the Ari, and a bear or something
Yeah.
else. Okay, anyway,
That's supposed to learn that.
right, yeah. Okay, Hainu crew. So there we got an example of the groove. Okay, Hainu Adam. And here we also have an example of a person. Okay, so Abai, that's Abai's suggestion. Maybe I can learn it from that case. Okay, so the Gemara says, Afilu, okay, Ape, Rav Ravi, Ba'ape Zutra. One face is larger and one face is smaller. Okay, Umimai. Okay, and why do we say then? Okay, what are we talking about then? The Chalala Asara Bar Misach. Okay, Misachacha. So in other words, we still have the best we can come up with is the example of the Kruvim on the Kipporet, that the infant's face was 1 tefah. Having paused there, we're now going to get back to our main subject of the minimum height for the sukkah. Fine. You told me now, you've proved to me some way that it's got to be 10 tefachim. So now I've got a valid question. Am I including the schach in that tefachim, or don't I include the schach in that tefachim? Right? Doesn't that make sense? So that's what the Gemara is now going to ask. Umimai, and how do we know the chalala, that interior space of the sukkah, right? Asara, that it's 10 bar misachacha, excluding its
We're
schach.
talking still about the Ara here. And he's using the word schacha for the.
Whoa, you're jumping ahead, Michael. Hold on. You're jumping ahead. Okay, hold on. Okay, all right. So we've used this phrase, schach. We're going to come back to it in just a moment. That's what Michael was trying to, but we're not there yet. Ema, I would say, bahadeh schacha. I'm saying maybe it should include this schacha, this covering. Ella, rather. All right, what do I come back to? I'm coming back to using the temple as my model, aspects of the temple, right? Ella mi beit olamim gamar. But we should be able to learn it from the eternal temple. Dichtiv, why it's written there, V'habayit asher bana hamelech Shlomo Lashem, right? Shishim ama arko, okay, that Shlomo's temple was 60 ama in its length, ve'esrim rechavo, 20 in its width, ushloshim ama komata, and 30 amas high. Okay? Tiv, and then it's written, excuse me. Okay. Komat hakruv, the height of the cherub. Okay? Ha'echad eser ba'ama was 10 amma, v'chein hakruv hasheni, and likewise the second cherub, v'tani. And we learned there in a Braita. Ma matzinu b'beit olamim kruvim b'shalosh b'shlish habayit hen omdim. Didn't, says the Braita. Didn't we learn there in regards to the holy eternal temple that these kruvim then were 1/3 of the height? Okay.
These are extra proven, they're not the ones on the arrow.
Okay.
These are statues.
Right. So in other words, that there were these kruvim there that were 1/3 of the height. So if the entire height was 30, what is 1/3 of 30? Okay. All right. All right. So here the Gemara is going to tell us, spell it out now. Abayat Heinom Din, Mishkan Nami Kruvim. In the Mishkan, there also were kruvim. B'shlish habayat hein omdim, and they also were 1/3 of the height of the inside of the Mishkan. Mishkan kamahave, how tall was the Mishkan? Eser amot dichti, says it was 10 amot. Eser amot, sorry, Eser amot orech hakoresh, right? That it was 10 amos for the length of a board. Kama have laho, how many were there? Shitin poshche. All right, there were 60, right? Handbreadths, right? Talte, 1/3 of it. Kama have was how much? Esrim poshche was 10 tfachim. I'm sorry, 20 tfachim. Dal asara da'aron v'kaporet. Remove, right? 10, subtract 10 from of the aron and the cover. Pashulaho asara, it therefore leaves 10. And it's written vayu kruvim porshei knefayim lemala. Sochachin bechanfehem al hakaporet. And then now, if we're dealing with the two kruvim that are on the kaporet, on the cover, it says sochachin, that their wings were spread. Okay, right? They were spread over, right? Their wings were over the kaporis. Okay, now I have the word sochachin regarding the wing spread of the kruvim. I have the word schach that I use to talk about the covering of the sukkah. What am I going to do? I'm going to make an association between them, right? All right. Now, so what happens? Kriya Rachmana. Sorry. Kriya Rachmana sachacha lamala me asara. I see that the Hashem calls this covering above 10. Mamai, so that would give me an answer that the top of the minimum height of that sukkah means including the schach would give me the 10. Oh, well, wait a second. Let's see. So maybe I've got a problem. Maybe I want to argue that it includes the schach. Maybe I still am not sure if it includes the schach. But I'm going to have a question. Why? Because how do I know that the wings actually spread on top, right? And that's what my Gemara is going to ask now. Mimai the gadfinhu iluye vashayu. How do we know that the wings, okay, were raised above the heads, right? Kaime Dilma lahade vashayu kaime. Perhaps they were equal, okay, with their heads. That's the point. Amar Rav Acha bar Yaakov, Lamala Kativ, it's written specifically above. Va'ema, and I might say, delay tuva, all right? That I might say there, perhaps it was raised more, okay? Mi Kativ Lamala, do we really say it was really high, way high above? Ha Nechala Rabbi Meir, and that's acceptable to Rabbi Meir. Right? Hold on. The Amar Kol Ha'amot Hayu Benoniot. So Rabbi Meir is going to say, wait a second. What Amma are we using for measurement there when we refer to Beis HaMikdash? There were more than one Amma. We have an Amma of 6 tfachim. We have an Amma of 5 tfachim. Okay? And we have
A 6 plus.
we have a give or take 6. Right?
6 plus with
Okay.
the 2, not either a 1 half
Okay.
a finger.
All right. So the point is, says Rabbi Meir, all the ones used in that measurement were the intermediate Amma. Okay. Ela the Rabbi Yehuda, the Amar Amma shel binyan shishat fachim. But according to Rabbi Yehuda, he says no. There clearly was an Amma was strictly 6 tfachim. V'shel kelim chamisha, but those utensils were okay an Amma that measured only 5 tfachim. My ikalamema. So what are you going to say then? What about that? Says the Gemara, Aron v'kaporet kama have lahu. If we're now coming back to using the Aron, which we said before was 9 tfachim. Okay, and we said the kaporet, its cover was another one. So that's what gave me the 10. Was using that as my basic measure. All right, what happens? A tamnaya upalga. What do I get then? 8.5, right? Pashulaho chad sare palga. Okay, so that remains what? 11.5, right? Ema suka adahave chad sare palga. That would seem to imply then that the minimum height of a sukkah should be 11.5 tfachim, and not the 10 tfachim that we've argued so far. Ela la Rabbi Yehuda hilchata gamirela, but Rabbi Yehuda says it was a halacha l'Moshe Sinai that we learned. The Amar Rabbi Chia bar Ashi Amar Rav, in the name of that, namely the following: Shiurin, Chatzitzin, Umechitzin, halacha l'Moshe Sinai. Namely, that those measurements that were given to Moshe was a halacha l'Moshe Sinai. Okay, and when we talk about certain elements, okay, as aspects of these measurements, or aspects of partitions, or aspects of separations, okay, what are we talking about? That is a law of Moshe Sinai. So the Gemara says, hold on a second. Shiurin, when you're talking about measurements, D'oraita ninhu, we have a Torah source for these, don't we? Dichtiv. Why? Because we have a pasuk that says as follows: Eretz chita usaora, v'gefen utne te'ena, v'rimon eretz zayit shemen udavash. Okay, the pasuk says a land of wheat and barley and vines and figs and pomegranates, a land of oil producing olives and date honey. Okay. Now, what's going to happen is the Gemara is going to continue and use that pasuk to begin to say each item. Okay, how do we know that each one of these items is used as a measure? Okay, an example for a specific halachic measure. Right? That's how the Gemara is going to continue, which is we're going to just pick up a bit of it. Let's take the first example. All right, It says, Eretz chita usarav v'gefenu te'ena, etc. Va'amar Rav Chaim. He says as follows, Kol ha'pasuk hazeh l'shiurim ne'amah. This whole pasuk's, its main purpose is to give us a basis for measurements. Chita, first example. What's our case here? Lebayet haminuga. We're talking about a house that has been afflicted with what we consider to be tzora'at. Okay? How does wheat connect with this example? Ditnan, because we have a Mishnah that teaches. Hanichnas lebayet haminuga, v'kelav al ktefav, v'sandalav v'ta'abotav biyado. One who enters such an afflicted house, okay, and his garments, he's wearing his garments,
Carry.
okay, his garments, well,
We'll see it.
in a moment, all right? He's carrying his sandals, rings are on his feet. Question is he wearing or carrying his garment? Hu vehein tme'in miyad. They all become immediately impure. Okay, let's go over just a bit. All right, on to Vav Amud Aleph. Hayalavush kelav. If he's wearing his garments and his sandals and his on his feet and the jewelry is on his fingers, hu tamei miyad. Okay, he is immediately impure. Vehein Tohorin ad sheyish'eh b'kdei achilat pras. And it takes the time for him to eat half a loaf for these other items to become tameh. So that's the connection with chita, with the wheat. Okay? Pat chitin v'lo pat se'orim. And we're specifically talking about a loaf made from wheat and not a loaf made from barley. Okay? And so,
We have to go 2 more.
yes, I know. Mesav va'ochel b'liftan. And what are we talking about? That he's taking this bread, he's dipping it into some sort of a sauce, a dip, all right? All right? Why? Se'orah, d'tznan etzem k'se'orah mitamei b'maga u'b'masa ve'eno mitamei ba'ohel. Okay? And therefore, why? Because with barley, we have a Mishnah that teaches something else, okay? Namely, that the case is that it's okay, that when we talk about being impure, okay, and that means contact with flesh or bone of a deceased, that particular measurement is the amount of a bone. And that renders impurity regarding contact or carrying, okay? And it does not render impurity with regards to being under some sort of a facility.
Oh, hell, a bone fragment is
Okay.
not big.
Right? So we'll pick up there tomorrow with Vav Amud Aleph. Okay, it's about 6 lines down from the top of there.
Rabbi Green, I would like to suggest that over the next few days.
We're gonna
we
try to
do
pick
an
up.
and a quarter, so we cover this show.
Right, that's gonna be our effort.
I haven't been here for a while. The whole thing started, you
Now
wanted
then,
to show,
let's go.
to find out how tall the sukkah is to be.
No, the whole question, it started because the Torah does not give us a source as to the height of a sukkah. But then the rabbis say that if a sukkah is 20 amos high, it's not, but because the Mishnah states then a sukkah 20 amos high is too high. That's what it's.
But then it says that there's an halacha Mashem Sinai, they do know what the height should be.
No, it says that certain measurements can be connected with this pasuk, and that this pasuk gives us examples of how to use certain measurements. It doesn't spell out the exact.
So it's not,
measurement.
no halacha mashim how tall the sukkah should be,
No,
but it says so, that there was a halacha.
no, it says that Moshe learned measurements as a halacha Moshe.
Not about the sukkah.
But it doesn't say it's written in the Torah.
As you said last year, it's halacha mashim Sinai, so we know what height we have.
Well, now, hold on.